Good morning, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being with us this morning for National Indigenous Peoples Day. We'll start with the land acknowledgement, and I'll ask Councillor Contois to come forward. Councillor Contois was on a subcommittee to choose the wording for our Bradford West Gwillimbury land acknowledgement.
My pleasure and my honor. I am Indigenous. This is important, and I do get emotional, so bear with me. So as a visitor on this land, the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury acknowledges that the land on which we gather today is traditionally known as the territory of the Inuit nations, which include Ojibwe, Ottawa, and the Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Great Fire Confederacy. We recognize that Baronia, Windat, Chippewa, and this is the tongue twister, Ada, and no Shawnee. It took me a while for that. I lost my language as well, so I have to learn it as well. So thank you for that. Nations which have walked on these territories over time. In times of great change, we recognize more than ever the importance of honoring Indigenous history and culture, and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation, respect, and good health with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Miigwech.
Thank you, Mark. So today is National Indigenous Peoples Day, June the 21st, 2022. So the town does have a proclamation. I will read that now. Whereas the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury acknowledges the rich culture, heritage, and achievements of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in Canada. And whereas the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury recognizes the inherent rights of Indigenous people as the original inhabitants of the land where we stand. Through this acknowledgement, we underline that the fundamental strength of our community lies in our unique racial, ethno-cultural, and Indigenous diversity. And whereas the town of Bradford West Gwillimbury Council and the people of this town are committed to creating an inclusive society, and we both seek and welcome opportunities to strengthen ties with our Indigenous community. And whereas we support the aims of truth and reconciliation to shine light on the tragic legacy of the treatment of Indigenous people in Canada, including in residential schools, and to commemorate the survivors, their families, and their communities. Therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Rob Keffer and members of council proclaim June the 21st, 2022 as National Indigenous Peoples Day in the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury. So thank you, everybody, and it is an honor to be here today, and we're here to listen, to honor, to remember, but to celebrate. So to celebrate the rich cultural history of our Indigenous nation that we have in the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury. That we are here today because it is a national day of honoring Indigenous people, and June the 21st is National Indigenous Peoples Day. This is a day for all Canadians to recognize and celebrate the unique heritage, diverse cultures, and the outstanding contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The Canadian Constitution recognizes that these three groups as Aboriginal peoples, also known as Indigenous peoples. Although these groups share many similarities, they each have their own distinct heritage, language, cultural practices, and spiritual beliefs. In cooperation with Indigenous organizations, the Government of Canada chose June the 21st, the summer solstice, for National Aboriginal Day, now known as National Indigenous Peoples Day. For generations, many Indigenous peoples and communities have celebrated their culture and heritage on or near this date, due to the significance of the summer solstice as the longest day of the year. National Indigenous Peoples Day was announced in 1996 by then Governor General of Canada, Romeo LeBlanc, through the proclamation declaring June the 21st of each year as National Aboriginal Day. This was the result of consultations and statements of support for such a day made by various Indigenous groups. So we are here today, and I'm pleased that we're joined by White Eagle. And White Eagle, a resident of Bondhead, but travels the world talking about the message from our Indigenous fathers and mothers and the importance that the Indigenous culture has around the world. So I will ask White Eagle to come forward now. And last year, this is a braid of sweetgrass, and I was given it by White Eagle, and I kept it in my office. It's right across from my desk where I'm able to look at it, and it stays green, and you can still smell the sweetgrass. And it's an amazing remembrance that we have to remember the importance of our Indigenous people. So thank you, White Eagle. I will let you say a few words and then do a pledging ceremony.
Greetings, my brothers and sisters. And we say in our language, Miigwech. Miigwech. Can you say Miigwech? What? Say Miigwech. Put your hand on your heart. And together we say Miigwech. How do you remember the word? Think of make a wish. Make a wish. Miigwech. And we're very honored today to have several elders and a council that has done a good job. They did good. And I look at them now and I realize that they're not leaving, they're just transcending into the higher great council. So they're becoming big council members now. So we look at them and honor them. I want to take a moment, place your hand on your heart. Everyone's hand on their hearts, good. Together what we're going to say to these, the council, that will be leaving. We want to thank them. So in our language we will say Miigwech. 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 Good, thank you. Thank you. It's so important. And we have the minister of the United Church in Bondhead, and wonderful teachers. I have a photograph here of a chief from up north, and you know, and the lady was your grandfather? Yes, and that was her grandfather. He was chief up in the Northlands. So here we are today to celebrate the longest day of the year. And isn't it funny, when I look at you guys, you look like you're so refreshed. You could go for another 10 years.
I love you.
Yeah. But the truth of the matter is, they have served their time. And they've not only served their time, but they've stayed the course. And that's so important. And for, you know, for James Leduc, who is Métis, and we say to him in his language, I want you to say with me, we're going to speak Bungi, which is Métis. So we're going to say together, I walk my foot. I see my eye. Why ask you? There. That's greeting you, James, in your language, which is the Bungi Red River language for the Métis people. Now, long ago, I traveled to the Northlands of northern Canada, and my journey started on the road to Red Lake. And I remember as a young man leaving and going up there on a bus, and I fell asleep. I sleep a lot, you know, and it's my favorite hobby. So, you know, if I sit too long, I sleep. So it's part of the, I think after you get to 80, then it all seems to fit. So anyways, I was on the bus and this bus driver started shaking me. And he said, "You get out here." And I said, "What?" He said, "You get out here." And I was waiting to see a light. There were no lights. Just a sign that said Red Lake. And then as I watched the bus disappear into the night and the taillights of the bus, and I looked at this road and I thought, oh my goodness, have I done the wrong thing here? So I began to walk. And as I walked, I was singing because I was terrified. And then all of a sudden this huge dog came and walked with me. And I thought, thank you, please don't leave me. And so he walked with me for hours. And as I walked, I couldn't believe that, you know, over the next hill, and it still kept getting darker, colder. And then I saw a flash of lights on the sky. And it meant a truck or a vehicle was coming. So what I did was I stood in the middle of the road. I didn't know whether I should lay down, and then I thought, no, with my luck, they'd run over me. So I'm gonna stand up in the middle of the road like this. And I did. And this truck stopped, and the man said, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to Red Lake. And he said, well, crawl up on the back of the truck. And as I'm getting up on the back of the truck, he said to me, so how long has the timber wolf been walking with you? And I almost had a bowel movement. Yeah, it was like close. Anyway, he said, I saw him jump off when my lights picked him up. But you know, in our language and in our teachings, and Troy, you would be interested to know this, that when a wolf comes into your life, wolf is teacher. And my teacher had come to meet me and greet me on the beginning of my journey as a young man on the road to Red Lake. And then he said to me, the truck driver said, you're going to be in a couple of hours. And I said, what? He said, it's over 100 miles into Red Lake. So my journey began. And you know, the wonderful thing is, I look here and I see tomorrow. I see the children of tomorrow that are gathering, and those that have come that maybe are fathers and parents, and maybe not yet, but be careful because you could be. So you need to be responsible. Yeah, you're right. Over there. So what we're doing today is we are celebrating, and I would be remiss to celebrate our National Indigenous Day without, first of all, honoring the council and the years that they have served and their integrity. And so to me, that speaks for itself. You know, when we walk a mile in our moccasins, we learn all about the teachings of Canada's First People. My father was in jail for 7 years, so he was a prisoner of war. So when he left, my mother was pregnant with me, and when he came home, I was 7 years old. But my mother had to raise her children on her own as a Native woman. And at nighttime, she would have us push the furniture against the door and stick knives in the door, because men would come and they would try and rape our mother. So back in those days, I remember when my first week in Red Lake, they found the body of a young Native woman, and it was down by the water, and she had a box. The miners, they never even chose to find out who did that, because she was only a Native woman. She was a squaw. My mother, the person called my mother a squaw. And I thought, how sad that they would say that, because that's a very rude term, you see. So what I want to do today is, would you come up? Can you come up over there? Hello? You, come. You, come. Yeah. So I want you to come over here. Thank you. I would like to introduce to the people. We have Ron Orr, who is the assistant elder to Elders Night that is held in their home. And so we have gatherings of Elders Night, and we teach. And so Ron and his wife Christine have been very generous and very kind to us, and they have exhibited what unconditional love is all about. And so here is an example of, he's just come back, Joseph, he just come back from the meetings in Ottawa and met with many of the chiefs and brings their blessings to us. And David Nawagabo was honored. He has a practice up in Rama and is First Nations. So how many people would there have been, Joseph?
About 200.
About 200. So that is wonderful. So Joseph is helping by keeping me organized, and he can do that very well. And we honor him. But I wanted to say that just remember that the council is not leaving. They are going up into the higher octaves of councilship to the Great Council. But we don't want them to go too high, because then they're gone. So we want to make sure that everyone understands they're just going to the entrance, but not beyond. And so today we honor the Native people. And it's very interesting, because when my mother, I don't speak the language, but because we were never allowed to. And we were not allowed to. My mother was very fearful that if we were, and made us promise we would never get a card, because if we did, they would know where we were. And my mother was very strong in her beliefs and said they did that during the war, and people, they knew where people were. So I want you to promise me that you will never get a card, and you will not speak the language, because she was terrified that it would take us like they did her and her sisters. So now I'm just, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else, any other elders that need to sit, please? There's empty chairs. Good, good. So anyways, I want to thank Troy for coming with his mom this morning. And he was looking at the shell, which I'm going to do the smudge. So when we smudge, it means that we clear our brains. And God knows, today, if there was ever a time in the history of humanity when our brains need to be cleaned. So we're going to do that. I'm going to drum first. This is, by the way, this lady's grandfather, who was chief in the Northlands. So we honor, I asked if we could just use his picture in the ceremony and put it on the table of honor. So now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to, we have a beater and we have a drum. This is called the heartbeat of Mother Earth. So what we do is when someone passes, the drum is not beat because it remains silent. Because the heartbeat of Mother Earth is the drum. We think of the times when our ancestors gathered in the forest because they were afraid that if they were seen, they would be tortured. Now listen, I want you to sing with me a native song.
There's the choir.
Yeah, you're going to be. So we got two good singers here. And so I'm going to ask them to sing with me. Thank you. And we gave this braid to the mayor many years ago. He kept it in his office. It's green. And you can smell it today. It's 6 years old. Because every braid is a prayer. And it's tied at both ends. Smell it. Can you smell it? Yeah, can you smell it? Yeah, good. There it is. So anyway, what we're going to do is we've spoken the Métis language today. I walk my foot, I see my eye. Why ask you? So that means we're here because we believe. What do we need to do? And that's where we come. We come with open hearts today. And what I want you to do is, what's your name?
Dave.
Dave, and what's your name? John. Dave and John.
Generic name.
Generic names. Well, I'm going to give you two native names. So, how old are you?
35.
Oh, 35.
Good age, right?
35. Oh my goodness, are you a father? Not yet, eh?
No.
Ah.
No rush.
And what about you, John? Not a father yet. You want to be? Yes, you will be. Yes, you'll have 3 children. And you'll have 2. A boy and a girl. 2 boys and 1 girl. So now, I want to give them the names. So I think for you, it should be, what animal is significant to you?
Significant?
What animal seems to hang around you?
I don't have a spirit animal.
Yeah,
Not that I've been to see.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to call you Raven,
Cool. Thank you.
okay? And John, I'm going to call you flying. Yeah. Do you have an animal near you? Okay. So what we're going to do is Raven and young Raven. Okay? There you go. Now I want them to sing with me. So if they can't sing, you know, they basically have to stay here. So you have to get over here. Okay? Get over here. And now what I want you to do is listen. And because you're going to sing too.
We need
So-
some backup vocals.
That's it. There you go. See, there we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the drum. When they are old, when they are old, when they are, hey ya, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now it's your turn. Here we go. Get up here.
Oh, they'll be
So now we want everyone to sing Wendy Yaho. Wendy Yaho. Wendy Yaho. Ho ho. Meaning, we open the skies. Today we look at the sky and the heavens are open. And we are ready to greet the day and to greet the moment and realize that someone said, oh, it's a terrible time to be alive. It's a wonderful time because this is the time that we can make a difference and that we can speak out and speak up. And did you know, my mother, bless her heart, who's at the Great Council now, but you know, she was so afraid that we would be taken as they were, she and her sisters. And so, what happened is today we honor all of those that carried you, your mothers and fathers. We honor them. So place your hand on your heart. Hands on your heart. Good. Good, thank you, Josh. Good. And together we say, Miigwech, Miigwech, Miigwech. To the Creator of life who gave us our journeys, and to realize that we are but children who have lost our way, and it's finding and getting back on the path. And the biggest lesson that we learn in our journey is the lesson of being able to surrender. Surrender meaning let go, let go. Who cares 100 years from now who was right or wrong? And I had spoke with a person yesterday and they said, my father didn't speak to me for 4 months because I raised my voice to him. And you know, if you're not speaking to someone, change that, make it right. And that's what it's all about. So now, what we're going to do is, we were going to sing Wendy Yaho. Can we try it? Wendy Yaho, Wendy Yaho, Wendy Yaho, Wendy Yaho, ho, ho, ho. Is a lawyer. And basically, so he works with the law, and he works with the law, but we work with the law of God. And it's so important for us to understand that the law of man and the law of God is quite different. Someone said to me, did you get your vaccination? And I said, why do you ask that? And he said, no, I just wondered. I said, you know, we have 4 bodies. You have an emotional, a mental, a physical, and a spiritual body. And our spiritual body is our soul. And no vaccination can touch the soul, because the soul is above and beyond. So it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, this is just our canoes that you're in. Well, yeah, when you were born, you got a canoe. Everybody here has a canoe. It's called your body. And when you realize the canoe is just, it's temporary. It's temporary. One day, it'll be gone. But you won't be gone. It's the biggest eye-opener is when we believe and we see beyond. If you go on YouTube, look up music, relaxation music, and you'll love it because it's like you're in the forest and it's so beautiful. So here we are today. I want to thank John and David. Yes, David. Yes.
Raven.
I thought you were going to say Raven. You should be Raven, and you should be, where is John? He's young Raven. So the two of you have something in common. So here we are. Are there any questions so far? Okay. I just want to now do the smudge for the others. And so, we'll do this. Okay, so everyone has to be smudged. So, anyone that was not smudged, hold your hands. Yes, thank you. Hold your hand to your heart. And I want you to take your hand, one hand, and go over your head 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then 3 times to our hearts. 1, 2, 3. And together we say, Megwich, Megwich, Megwich. It is done, my children. Megwich. So now we then do the smudge, the sacred smudge, and is it Jordan? Not Jordan. What's your son's name? Troy. Troy was sort of interested in the shell, and he said, I didn't know they grew that big. And this is an abalone shell, and so we use it for burning the incense in it. So this is my eagle feather, and we did ceremony at Taj Mahal in India when Mandela passed, and we've done ceremony all over the world. And we've been with those who have transcended into the higher octaves, and to those people who are now have joined the Great Council and sit in the presence of the Creator of all life, who knew us all long, long before we were formed in our mother's womb. You're here today, not by accident. You came here for whatever reason, but in truth, you were brought here by Spirit. And in oneness of Spirit, together, we gather today to celebrate Indigenous Day, the longest day of the year, the summer solstice, and to remember that we are all part of that. And together we say, Megwich, Megwich, and then next time, Megwich, John, Megwich. You say Megwich? Okay, I'm just looking, because what we do in our teachings is we catch someone and they're not doing it. We make them come up here. So I'm looking. I'm keeping an eye open here. Did you do it? Yeah, you did. You did, you guys. Okay. Now, one more thing I would like to say. My mother always told me and told us as children, get those shoes off. They'll make you sick. And you know, she was right, because shoes have an insulation that insulates us from the earth. And when you have a chance, take your shoes off. Put your feet in the earth. And just allow yourself to be connected to Mother Earth. You know, it's said that the higher the high rise, the lower the morals. Interesting, eh? Because the higher you go, the more detached you are from the earth. So I want to say thank you. Thank you to the council for representing us, for being the voice of the people. And you will continue, each one of you, to speak on behalf of the children.
Doing the smudging ceremony and your words of wisdom. That we have Patty Rogers here. Patty, would you like to come and say a few words? That you have worked with Indigenous people throughout Manitoba and Ontario, and if you could say a few words.
Good morning. I want to begin by thanking Mayor Keffer for inviting me here today. I am the minister at Bond Head United Church. I was hesitant to accept his invitation because I believe for people like me whose ancestors came to this land in ships, today is a day to listen to the voices of people whose traditional territory I stand upon. But I was asked to speak, and so I speak as one who has traveled across Canada into many traditional territories, listened to the stories of survivors, and to voices far wiser than mine. I speak as a white woman. 5 generations ago, my ancestors came from England to this land called Canada. They had never owned land before. The promise of land was like a dream, and so they came. They came in rickety ships, through ice and storm, by cart and by foot, to a rocky, desolate, wind-swept place. A place where they planted and toiled and lived a life harder than they could have imagined. They were devout and honest people, hard-working people. They did not know, nor did their children nor their children's children know, the horrible price paid for that life and that land. That knowledge has fallen to me. It is a horrible truth. 7 generations of human beings, the first peoples of Canada, were and continue to be cheated and robbed, beaten, incarcerated, starved, infected, poisoned, murdered, abused, stolen, misrepresented, unrepresented, ignored, and almost but not quite annihilated for land. For the land I call home and the life I call mine. This knowledge leaves me with a crushing guilt. Once, to alleviate that guilt, I packed up some running shoes and a bunch of old hymn books, and I mailed them to a community I heard was riddled with poverty and inadequate housing, education, and health care. It felt good to be doing something, and I patted myself on the back for my good works, until I learned that the hymn books were useless because that community worships in Cree, not English, and there was no place to warehouse the running shoes. I hadn't taken the time to even ask the people of that community what they needed, and I realized my true motivation was to do something that made me feel better. What they needed was my attention, not my charity. I learned to pay attention when I worked for the Aboriginal Ministries unit at the United Church. I traveled across Canada meeting with leaders in communities both remote and urban. We were in 6 Nations once, and we spent an afternoon telling the people of that community how they might improve their community, when a young man sitting way in the back stood up and asked, "What do you know of 6 Nations?" And he was absolutely right. We knew nothing. In Norway House, Manitoba, we handed out copies of the United Church's Apology to First Nations People, a sacred document for us in the church. And one of the men at the meeting turned to the person beside him and said, "Why do they keep saying those words? It is like a child wrote them." And he was right. The words are written as though the people the church speaks them to don't understand the language. are foreigners in their own land. Sometimes my people are not very good at listening. I find great hope, though, in the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It has brought public attention to the truths of colonialism and residential schools and their multi-generational impact on Indigenous peoples and on Canada as a whole. It did this work by listening. Its recommendations offer real practical solutions that begin with building relationships with each other, getting to know each other. My ancestors were not bad people. They were ordinary people caught up in an evil system. Gandhi once wrote, "You assist an evil system most effectively by obeying its orders and decrees. An evil system does not deserve such allegiance." Breaking allegiance with an evil system begins with me. I'm someone who uses words for a living. The right words are really important to me. When I hear an acknowledgement of the land at public meetings, in schools, and in churches, there is one word that troubles me. It's the word we. Saying we implies that someone among us is going to do something. Maybe the church, maybe the government, maybe our neighbor. Responsibility for actually acting gets swallowed up in the royal we. So I decided I was going to say the word I. I acknowledge that I stand on Treaty 18 land. Did you know that just up the road here, there was a Wendat village? It would still be there, except that the people were decimated by smallpox. This is also the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Chippewa people, who entered into treaty with my ancestors. Saying I acknowledge puts the onus on me to take seriously the relationship I hope to have with the people who welcomed my ancestors to their land. A few years ago, I contributed to a book called A Child Laughs. It's a book about the experience of children all over the world. Children who have the grace-filled and therapeutic ability to laugh, even in the midst of terrible circumstances. I collaborated with a Métis writer who gave his perspective on the residential schools, and I responded as the descendant of European settlers. In the book, I made a pledge to the relationship I hope to have with Indigenous people we have gathered to recognize and honor today. Here it is. I pledge to seek truth, to walk humbly, and to act justly. I pledge to resist the forces of evil that become habitual and systemic forms of injustice, violence, and hatred. I pledge to be an ally. I am prepared to be marginalized for speaking out against that which erodes human dignity and solidarity. I make this pledge in the sure and certain knowledge that evil does not, cannot, undermine or overcome the love which forgives, reconciles, and transforms. So as a white woman whose people came here on ships, I offer these words, and I thank you, white people, for your words, and may this day strengthen our relationship. Thank you.
Very thought-provoking words, but we're here to learn, we're here to listen, we're here to do better, and we're here to make our country as great as at all possible. So at this time, we're going to have an Aboriginal version of O Canada, and it's sung by Asani, an Aboriginal women's a cappella group with members based in Alberta and British Columbia. And in this recording, they have reimagined their national anthem to reflect the myriad peoples who call Canada their homeland. So please stand if you're able for our national anthem, and then we'll have a flag raised from First Nations. Scott Davidson gifted this flag to the Town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury. by thanking